So my name's Angela, and I did these projects. I'm technically I'm a jeweler, so I don't know why I keep doing these really huge projects. It's like, well, I'm going to go back to jewelry after this. But anyway, so I was interested in cyanotype, which is the blue color you see. It's a photographic process where you cover something with, at first it's a liquid, and once it dries, it's photosensitive to just UV light. So you put it out in the sun, whatever is blocking the sun will stay white, and the rest will turn this gorgeous blue color. And so at first I did these little ones, the little tent there and the little house, as sort of thinking about the different kinds of ways you can get comfort. Part of I was also thinking about how a tent is such a fun thing if you're going camping. But if it starts raining, I like pack it up and go home. And so I can just have this incredible empathy and feeling of what it must be like to try to live that way and how hard that would be. And so it's sort of a mixture. You'll see in the video that the RV is actually a model of the RV that Kian lives in, and the person that I interviewed. And I really tried to stay true to the shape, and that was pretty tough. But it was anyway. So I made these, and I made them lamps for that. One of the conversations was interesting with the other person, Walt, the house person, was about walking around in the evening and seeing that amber glow in the house, and the warmth and coziness of that, and sort of being an outside viewer. And then I worked on the big piece, which was kind of crazy, but I wanted a tent. I pictured actually originally, of course, like 3 of them, but that wasn't realistic. So it's supposed to sort of imply a storm on the outside, the river at the bottom, and the clouds. And that's also cyanotype. I just put it on repurposed bed sheets. So it's great. You can just get cotton fabric and it'll print. So I printed in my driveway with these giant pieces of plastic that I painted. So anyway, but on the inside, if you haven't been on the other side of it, there's a cozy, warm inside, which has 2 chairs and a table, hopefully creating that connection and conversation that I felt like to me, this project is giving voice to people, hopefully helping people, facilitating their story. And I think, to me, the way that we feel most empathetic is by being able to connect with an actual individual person and really feel their story. And then the last part of my installation is hidden throughout the gallery are little tents. This was the collaborative part where the 3 of us got together and we printed. You can just draw on acetate and then put it out in the sun, and it will be the negative that prints on the fabric. And so I took the fabric that we did together and I made little tents, and those more represent that isolation and that trying to hide in plain sight sort of versus community and connection. So, any questions? Thank you. Oh, sure.
Yeah, my question to you is, how did you feel when you were talking to these people? What did you take away from your conversations with these 2 men, the housed and the unhoused? Maybe that's too broad of a question.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting is in my circle of friends, I have the smallest living situation of all the people I know. I live in about 500 square feet. I had the biggest house of the 3 of us. So even the house person, Walt, that I interviewed, he lives in like 400 square feet. And then Kian lives in a motorhome. So it was kind of an interesting perspective of all the different things that you take for granted. And Kian was very wonderful to talk to because he's really, he's very good at articulating his experience, but also really being able to see the big picture. He's really aware of all the different situations. So I actually learned, just that sort of process. Like he was talking about one time watching someone getting their motorhome towed because they were parked somewhere they weren't allowed to, and him watching and feeling, of course, could relate, right? Because it could really ruin your life if everything you own is in that motorhome and it gets towed. That can be it, right? Your birth certificate and everything. And the lady turned and started cussing at him because she thought he was being voyeuristic and kind of like, get her out of here. Whereas he was actually feeling so much compassion, but he was working and he didn't feel like he could like go stand up for her at that moment. So anyway, it was a really interesting experience. Just, again, really connecting with people and breaking those. I think we're afraid of difference, and I think we're all like, a lot of us here, it's like we're one paycheck away from, that, tenuousness as a renter, in Santa Cruz. I feel pretty tenuous anyway, but
Yeah.
does
Thank
that,
you.
yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. 2 rounds of applause.
I have a question about the cyanotype process.
Oh, okay.
It seems like magic to me. So what actually makes it photosensitive?
Right. It's 2 chemicals. And you can buy, like, these pieces of fabric, you can buy them pre-coated. There's a company that makes paper and fabric that's already ready, and all you got to do is take it out, put it in the sun, and then rinse it with water. And it's a non-toxic process. So it's really cool. So the little ones I did some tests and then to make sure the acetate worked and stuff like that. And so that's what we used for those. So you buy the 2 powders and mix them. It feels fun. You're like a little chemist. This much of this one and this much of this one. And I forget the exact name of the chemicals right off the top of my head, but it's one of the most early forms of photography. And in fact, the first published book of photographs was a woman who did cyanotypes of plants, because you could just stick a plant. Like if you look inside, you'll see the table just has plants, and I just grabbed the leaves off of a geranium, put them on the sensitized fabric. So it's the hardest part is you got to dry it. So my closet had these big pieces of bed sheet, and I got them approximately the right size. Got them dipped in the stuff, and then have to hang them in the closet to dry, and then take them outside quickly, put the negative on them. So it's magic, but but that size is a little ridiculous.
So you have to get it wet and then let it dry in a dark place.
Yes,
Ice.
and then as soon as the sun, it doesn't have to be a full dark room, as long as there's no UV light. So if you had a UV light, you could also do it. I learned it from Janet Fine at Cabrillo, her summer class, which is coming up this summer again, if you're interested. She's a great teacher, and it's a process of layering different imagery in photographic ways.
Cool.
Yeah, so most people do a negative, and then the clouds on the little tent and the house, those were a negative of an image of actual clouds made into a negative, so they have a different look than my version of a negative was I took gesso and painted on a piece of clear plastic. It's really big. I'm not a painter, I'm a jeweler, remember? If you look inside the tent, there's a cute little copper wire. That's more where I'm comfortable. So I was out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you mentioned you're a jeweler. Why did you decide to work with fabric for this project?
Yeah. I think part of it was the tent. If you look in the inside is metal. That was fun. There's a really cool process I did with pipes that are just galvanized pipe is a really cheap building material. And there's these cool clamps that I learned about from my girlfriend. And so I did do another structure for the scrap program that was a small shelter. My point being, could I make a house out of trash? And I did make, again with my girlfriend Shelley, who isn't here yet, was actually going to the dump and getting wood and building an actual structure with like 2x4s and sheets of plywood. So there's my work has often been about the haves and the have-nots and security and insecurity and fear. That's kind of my fascination about the human condition, I guess. So the tent was, what drove me was the idea of a tent. That's why.
And you have jewelry here.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you for the tip. On the way out, you can see some jewelry that is for sale, and it is a fundraiser. I made these little houses out of copper pipe. When I was at the scrap program, I made jewelry out of the recycled copper. And so I take a slice of copper pipe and I shape it like a house, and I hung little beads and pearls in it. And the money's all going to go to the Homeless Garden Project. So there's a few of those left.
So
If you
exit
need.
through the gift shop.
Yes, we can take care of that for you today. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angela.
Thanks.
We're going to move on to
Again? I know. Thank you.